I'm Mark Gagan and you're listening to the Voice of Insurance podcast, produced in association with Advantage Go. Pick and choose your own best-of-breed insurtech and data providers with Advantage Go's ecosystem. I can't believe it's been 3.5 years since I had Alex Maloney on the podcast for a full episode to himself. We've had brief catch-ups at Monte Carlo and when we bump into each other in the London market, but I haven't had time with Alex properly devoted to understanding what he and the Lancashire Group of companies is thinking. A huge amount has happened since we last spoke, not least Lancashire's entry into the Casualty Treaty arena and its decision to open up a new operation in the US excess and surplus lines market. Alex is a great guest because he's one of the most direct and straight-talking people I've had on the show. What you see is what you get. And what we get here is a tour of global insurance and reinsurance market opportunities and what Lancashire is doing to make the most of them with a minimum of fuss. We also get a distillation of Lancashire's strategy of managing selective growth while trying to preserve a small company mindset and culture, and at the same time pitching something slightly different to industry talent. It's all substance and no spin. Listen on, and I promise you'll learn an awful lot in a very short amount of time. You'll also get to meet probably the straightest shooter running a public company in our sector. Enjoy the podcast. Alex, welcome back to the Voice of Insurance.
Thank you, Mark. Great to see you.
The last time you were on the podcast, well, you've been on the Monte Carlo special a couple of times. It's slightly different format where there's sort of 20 people all talking at once and it's more like a documentary. The last time I had you actually just to myself for a good 45 minutes was 3.5 years ago, which is crazy. And that was during the pandemic. And so we were all sitting remotely on Zoom and whatever else. As I was looking at the questions I wanted to ask you for this time around, I looked at the headline and I ended up putting on the episode when it was released, and it was controlled aggression. That was my takeaway, the 2 words that I had put on my headline. So you're going to have to help me out this time. So what would you like me to take away this time? What's going to be on the headline?
I would like you to take away that we've done what we said we would do. 3.5 years, it's gone incredibly quick. And I couldn't believe when you told me it was 3.5 years ago, but we've done a huge amount of work at Lancashire. Lots has changed. It's been a great market, but we have done what we said we would do. And we continue to move forward in a great market. Everyone should be positive about where we are. And that's the message that I say to all of our people.
That's good. So great market. So where are the best bits of opportunity? Because you're playing right across the spectrum.
Look, I'm still of the view there's opportunity everywhere to different degrees. And there's probably only 1 or 2 classes of business that we are relatively muted on at the moment. But if you believe in the cycle as we do, that will change eventually. But I think the obvious areas, property has just been a great market. And listening to your podcast, I think everyone agrees. Property insurance, and we can talk about our foray into the US later, but property is a great place to be at the moment.
It's amazing to think that in the 21st century, we're still talking about property.
I know, but there's lots of it, isn't there? Especially in America.
And it's worth money and it needs to be protected.
Yeah. And in an inflationary environment, the prices go up and that requires more of the product we sell. So I think property is the obvious opportunity. But look, we've been in a world driven by some pretty poor underwriting, but we've seen 6-7 years of rate change, which should mean that most classes of business are in a very healthy space outside of maybe a couple of the energy lines that we're more concerned about. But so we do see opportunity everywhere. And at Lancashire, we always try to push a bit harder where we think the markets are great and be a bit more muted where we're less excited about the opportunity.
What you're saying about the energy markets, what's the concern there?
We write various parts of the energy market, upstream energy, onshore energy, power. We're more concerned about the upstream energy market. In old-fashioned underwriting, if you just look at the limits that are available for clients versus the premium base, for me, I just think it's completely unbalanced. And we have enjoyed a very benign period and our results are very good. And that's what drives any market. But I think history will tell you that claims will happen at some point, and I think that could look quite bad quite quickly. So we're quite muted on
We've both been around long enough to know that will happen.
You kind of know what's coming in this game, don't you? You know, history does repeat itself.
The energy transition, is it affecting it in some ways? I suppose, is that base kind of stagnating?
Look, I don't think my comments are based around any sort of energy transition. It's just old-fashioned underwriting and...
What's in front of you?
Yeah, what's in front of you and knowing that claims will come, as they always do.
After that digression, the big news with you has been the launch of your excess and surplus lines, E&S platform, and that's very much a property platform at the moment.
It is at the moment, yeah.
Give me the big picture on that. That's a big thing to go and do.
Look, I think you start with, it's the world's largest insurance market and we're not there. So that's the question that we have for ourselves. again, I'm obsessed with the cycle and you're just in a great place. So if you're going to go and do something like the US or into any class of business, you need to come in at a time that's good, and that's obvious. We had someone internally to set that business up for us, which is hugely important for me. So look, it's product lines we understand. It's the right time in the cycle with someone I trust on the ground, and that seems the appropriate time to enter.
And so there you're going to be hopefully accessing business that you wouldn't be accessing in London or Bermuda.
Yeah, and look, there's no point in Lancashire going to the US to compete for business we currently have. And you can imagine the set of some of our friendly London wholesale brokers as well. So you have to manage those conflicts. And we very much want to access business that doesn't need to come to markets like London.
So it's like lower limits? And
yeah, I mean, typically lower TIVs, typically business that the brokers don't have to share with London wholesalers, has no need to come to the UK market. We're writing property over there. We're writing some energy casualty, and we will look at other classes of business as we get more established and as we can hire the best people.
And I suppose with those higher volume things, that might be sort of programs, schemes kind of things?
Look, there's nothing really off limits, and I'm sure our business plan will change over time, and flexibility is one thing that you have to be constantly flexible in today's market because things change so quickly. So we're happy to move with the market or move with the opportunity. We're happy to get some things wrong in the early days, as you do in any startup. It is a startup operation. There will be bumps in the road. We're very aware of that. But we are just focused on getting the foundations right and then moving forward. So we have to get it right versus how much premium can we write in the first year. It's more important to me to get it right. And yeah, it's an exciting opportunity for us.
And in terms of the size of that opportunity, is the plan obviously property now because it's a good time?
Yeah.
Would the plan be to expand into all classes?
Yeah, I mean, property is obvious. Other classes will be driven by obviously the underwriting opportunity and hiring the right people. Again, there's just basics in our business, and it's timing, it's cycle management, and it's people. And these businesses will just be driven by people.
So you see that opportunity. So someone's listening to the podcast and says, right, I'm doing this. I like the sound of this opportunity.
Come and Dragons Dennis. We'll give anyone 15 minutes.
But it's interesting. But in terms of your philosophy, do you think the person is more important even in the class or the state of its cycle?
I know everyone says it, but it's about having the right people in the right classes of business at the right time. And even when the market's against you, you very much need the right people. So that's why it's such a fascinating business, what we do.
As a keen student of all cycles, it's interesting that excess and surplus lines has a particular cyclical relationship with the admitted lines market, which we can certainly see, and you can see the sine waves of it happening, of increased sessions into the excess and surplus lines market at harder times when business is being shed from the admitted lines market. At the moment, we've had this really, really good run of increased showing into excess and surplus lines market and into London. How much of it do you think is cyclical, i.e. when the tide turns, it will go back again? And how much of it is secular, i.e. a permanent kind of change?
I think some of it will be cyclical because it always is. But I do think the world we live in feels more complex. Risks are more complex, and whether that's driven by climate change or regulation or litigation funding or all those other things that we have to manage today. So it just feels that risks are more complex, and that the E&S space feels like the natural market for that. I think when you're in the admitted space, and I'm not an admitted expert, but it just feels more clunky. It's more difficult. You're filing rates. You're dealing with regulators. You probably can't move quick enough. Everything seems to move quicker now. So it feels to me the E&S space is the obvious market for the more complex risks in a more complex world.
Because you've got that opportunity to change and to change quickly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt in mid-flow, but this is just a reminder that you could be advertising right here, right now, and getting your message directly into the ear of key decision makers in the insurance industry. And you'll be doing it while they're absolutely in listening mode. The podcast is the medium of the future, and so is audio advertising. Contact me on mark@thevoiceofinsurance.com, and I'll do everything I can to get you started.
I was looking through some of your recent financial reports, which were very good reading, so I'm sure investors are all pleased. In some of those, you were highlighting the fact that Lancashire is now 50-50 insurance, reinsurance.
Yeah.
I presume if everything executes the way it's planned at the moment, you will soon be more an insurance company than a reinsurance company. Would that be right?
There is no magical split for us, and the 50-50 looks deliberate, but it wasn't. And we're always driven by opportunity. So we don't mind how we access opportunity, whether that's insurance, reinsurance, Lloyd's, Bermuda, Australia, the US, makes no real difference to us as a business. I think the only part of our underwriting portfolio where we have a hard stop is our Casualty Treaty business that we started writing in 2021 from our Bermuda office. And that is an area where we do have a hard stop. And that's self-imposed by us, not by anyone else. And that is 20% of our underwriting portfolio is the hard stop for the Casualty Treaty portfolio, because as we know, it's probably the most difficult class of business that anyone has to tackle. For us, the hardest part of anyone's portfolio is probably Casualty Treaty. You see the constant reports of prior year reserving, which we don't have, but we're very aware that class is difficult. So that's the only class of business we have a hard stop around what part of our underwriting portfolio is going to be driven by that.
That's interesting, because it sounds like you don't have this perfect idea of this perfectly constructed portfolio. You'd rather it was, well, we'll do more property this year because property is good.
You just have to
and
move with the
therefore it
market.
will end up being a higher, in our diversification, it will be something that's a bit more spiky over there, but that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, and I think, look, when you're a smaller business, you have to move quicker than the big guys, and that's one of the advantages that we have being a smaller business. Clearly, there's lots of advantages of being a big business, but you can move quickly, and we're a bigger business today than what we were 5 years ago, but we can still do that. We can put our foot down harder in areas that we see great opportunity, and therefore moving the portfolio around in a world that seems to move quicker makes sense to me.
Say in stock portfolios, for example, the art of balancing that portfolio is actually selling all your winners and buying more of the ones that have lost you money in the interest of diversification and keeping your balance and keeping 20% here, 20% there, 20% there. It always sounds a bit counterintuitive. So you're much more, why don't I just have more of my winners and then worry about the diversification later?
Well, I think sometimes in our game, isn't it? The stocks that look like the losers are the ones that you want to get into, aren't they? And the winners are the ones that get out of. So there's always a lag in our world, isn't there? And
when we were probably last together, D&O was an absolute slam dunk.
Yeah.
And now, it's been kind of dunked.
Exactly. When it sounds horrible, you probably want to be in there, don't you? And when it sounds too good to be true, you probably want to be getting out.
Absolutely. Actually, we're talking about the size of the company. Obviously, it's bigger. I've always known Lancashire to be a company that had almost felt like it had a finite size. And if it got any bigger, it might give a special dividend, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Is that still correct, even though you have grown? You don't want to become Munich Re one day.
No. I think, look, none of us are big company people, and there will be a finite size to Lancashire, mainly driven by the market opportunity. And if the board said to me, make it into a $10 billion company, Alex, I think we'd have to find
someone else to do that.
Yeah, we'd have to find a new CEO. So we're not aiming to be a big company, but it was strategically important to become a bigger company. And I still think we can grow from here. And it's just balancing all the good things about Lancashire from the past with the company we have to be today. And that's a constant challenge for anyone in any business. But I think we've got that about right. And we just have lots more talent in our business than we had in the past, and that allows you to do that. If you just bring more good people in and they understand your culture, you can just move forward. You can't do that by yourself. So that's what we've done over the years.
Going back to the Casualty Re world, you moved into 3 years ago, 3 and a bit. I know it's really difficult to say, but I suppose it's more mature than it was 3 years ago. How's that experience? I'm sure an actuary would have palpitations if you started saying, well, you can't interpret too much of this. But year one is now in year 3. So how's it looking?
I think the short answer is too early to say, because casualty is a long tail class of business. But what I can say is that nothing has changed our view of the opportunity, up or down. The way we've approached the class is super conservative anyway. But every year we're going to challenge our assumptions. We're going to challenge the thought process that we had, but nothing's changed in our view. But I still think it's way too early.
But at least in terms of the offer to the market, it's something that's been received. Lancashire Casualty, well, I hadn't thought of that before, but
yeah,
you've got doors that are open to you.
Exactly. I mean, one thing we were chatting about before this was about Monte Carlo. And, one thing I really realized when I was in Monte Carlo last year, the second you start selling casualty, you do have some different meetings. You're important to a different type of client. Brokers want you to sell more product to their clients. So it's definitely opened some doors for us. It's allowed us to cross-sell a bit.
More trading opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, what was so interesting, wasn't it? When no one wanted to sell cat business, people are leveraging their cat, and when casualty is difficult. So it just gives you some different options. So yeah, it's definitely been a positive for Lancashire to be selling new products, and casualty is one that we do today.
And certainly from reading your financial literature, specialty reinsurance is again another area you highlighted. How big an opportunity do you think that is?
Look, so specialty reinsurance is an obvious avenue for us because of the amount of specialty expertise we have in the business. We have expanded our writings in Bermuda, so we're writing that business in Bermuda. We're staffing up in Bermuda. We've got someone from our London office that's soon to move out there. So yeah, that market's hard. That market's probably going to get harder post the Baltimore Bridge. That's a good opportunity for us. M&A in that sector with Wren and Validus may bring opportunity for Lancashire. So it's a natural avenue for expansion for us at the right time in the underwriting cycle. So it just feels right.
This is the reinsurance of classes that you already known pretty intimately on the insurance side.
And again, thinking about what I said earlier, it makes no difference to me. If we can get a better return for our shareholders writing those classes in the form of reinsurance versus insurance, that's the route we're going.
And so you're agnostic in that sense?
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, sometimes you can only get offered something via one channel or the other.
Exactly, yeah. In most cases, we'll write an element of both.
Something certainly in the UK financial press, we do love our doom and gloom.
Absolutely. And that's why we're British.
There's a bit of British doom and gloom in the high-end financial press has been a sort of recurring theme about the London Stock Exchange, not in its best moments, and by comparison, perhaps the US stock market's looking better with better valuations available. Are you under the kind of obligation that, obviously as a CEO, you've got a duty to those shareholders, if there is a better valuation to be had for Lancashire in New York, for example, as we've seen, is it your duty to go and check it out?
Clearly, it's my duty, it's the board's duty to always look what's best for shareholders, and we don't forget that. I don't think it's as simple as just saying, if you could move Lancashire to New York tomorrow, the valuation goes up materially. I don't think it's that simple. I think the Insurance is Hard had done a good article recently to say how some of the valuations have actually come down. So again, public versus private, it's very easy to look over the fence sometimes and think, oh, all my problems would be solved if I was over there. So I don't think it's as simple as that. On our company in particular, there's probably two factors. The first factor is just the factor of being UK listed at the moment, and lots of funds have got redemptions, and that's affecting the whole of the stock market. And I'm sure Hiscox and Beazley and Conduit would be as equally unhappy with their own share price as what I am.
I suppose it's not for us to start going to the very high level public policy about UK pensions regulations and how much they hold in equities and
wildly complicated and
stuff that's way beyond our influence.
So there's the stock market listing itself, and Lancashire more specifically, I believe we've demonstrated we're a different business. It just takes a while for that to really resonate with new shareholders. So I think there's a bit of time and distance here. And if we prove that we are a different business today, as I clearly think we are, I think the share price will recover over time. So sometimes you just have to be a bit patient.
You believe in cycles. So, if London's down, then it'll be up one day. If it's down today, it's cheap today. So people will buy it, won't they?
There's been times in our history when our share price has been wonderfully generous for the underwriting opportunity. And at the moment, it looks quite cheap versus the opportunity. So I've been here before.
I suppose global capital is global and it's footloose and it's fungible, and someone who's happy buying a stock at twice book in New York might look and say, well, why is this stock with similar metrics cheaper? Why don't I just buy that then?
Yeah.
And so in the end, things do tend to even themselves out one way or another.
Things do change quite quickly, yeah.
We couldn't be sitting in 2024 without talking about the automation of underwriting. I mean, we use the word AI a lot. Given where we are and given some of these technologies that have come through, how far do you think we could be automating what we're doing?
I'm sure there's a huge amount of our market that we can automate. And it's been a constant struggle for our industry, hasn't it, to adopt any form of real technology. I think on standard risks, it makes huge sense to me. For any standardized business, it just must be there to benefit all. I think on the more complex risks that we tend to deal with, I think there'll be less impact from things like AI. But clearly, we have a lot of young, ambitious people in our business, and the days have changed. When I was on the photocopier in 1992, you just done that job for 4 or 5 years, and the people today just won't do that. So we need to find those kind of solutions to keep our best people at that level, keep them interested. So if we can automate parts of our business, save money, and give those kind of people more interesting jobs, that has to be the answer.
Certainly, you're right. And I started in 1992, and I suppose we just had an attitude of, well, this is what we have to do to get on. We have to do the boring bit.
It was very much an apprenticeship. You had to sit in the corner and do what you're told for 5 years. And That's not where we live today, and that's fine.
As long as you listen to those young, bright, ambitious people, they'll tell you, won't they? That's the things they tell you very quickly. If they're sitting around doing something boring and repetitive, they probably say, well, we could probably automate this, couldn't we?
And it's a highly competitive market. You know, we spend a lot of time at all levels. How do we keep our best people? How do you appeal to your best people in a competitive market? And in my whole career, everyone says, we've never done a great job attracting people. There seems to be a constant lack of good people. So if you have good people at all levels, that's probably one of your biggest jobs as a business, keeping your best people.
And that's probably my last question is, particularly now you're a net hirer, you're growing, particularly in a new market where it's going to be presumably a little bit more labour intensive as you're close to the customer. What's that pitch? Come to Lancashire E&S or come to Lancashire here, because you have to fill in the blanks.
The first pitch is we're not a big company. So you have to be different to the big guys because we can't compete against what big companies can offer. So we have to offer something different. I think that we're still an underwriting company run by underwriters. We believe that we give people opportunities here that they wouldn't be given in bigger companies. So a good example would be certain people come to investor meetings. We try and have a very sort of flat structure where you're involving as many people as you can. We're still of the size where I think you can offer virtually sort of bespoke solutions to people that big companies can't. Lancashire's always been a company from day one where no one cares where you come from, how old you are. If you're good enough, you're going to get noticed. And most of the time we've done quite a good job giving people jobs and opportunities that keep them interested in our business. So I think if you can create an environment where people want to come to work, people look around the office and you don't have to be best friends with everyone, but you respect your colleagues and you have a culture and then get people paid appropriately, you've got a fair chance of keeping your best people. You won't forever because some people will just be offered jobs you can't compete with, and that's fine. But it's every sort of senior person's job in this company to get those soft hooks into people to make it hard to leave. And that's what we try to do.
And you've been here a long time too.
I have, yeah. I'm still here.
Well, Alex, I've really enjoyed our chat. Very brief, but things you're so direct.
Thank you.
And to the point. So, yeah, now that we've had that chat, so the headline you want me to put it will be, we did what we said we were going to do.
If we say we will do something, that's what we try and do.
Well, thank you so much.
No, pleasure.
Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, don't forget to subscribe or leave a like or a review or recommendation on whatever podcast platform you used to access this programme. These really help get the word out. Before we go, just a quick reminder that advertising slots are available here and in other places in the Voice of Insurance podcasts. Podcasting is the fastest growing medium and attracts a high quality audience of key decision makers. It's also an intimate medium where you, the listener, are right in the room with me and the interview subjects. Needless to say, that means it's a great way of getting your message out directly to an audience because you know you've got their full attention. It's also very cost effective. So get in touch with Mark at thevoiceofinsurance.com to find out how you could be speaking directly to the industry.
The Voice of Insurance podcast is produced in association with Advantage Go, enabling enterprise-scale underwriting through a single pane of glass. Voice of Insurance is produced by me, Mark Gagan. Music was written by Anna Gagan and produced by Carlos Gagan. Check out more podcasts and written comment pieces at www.thevoiceofinsurance.com.